Hello, Haunted Family. Welcome back. Story 1. Unusual Stories. The house I grew up in Tennessee originally belonged to my mother's great-grandparents. As a very young child, I would see a man standing at my bedroom door. He was there almost every night and stood with his arms folded across his chest. We had 4 bedrooms for a family of 9, so of course we shared bedrooms. And sometimes we'd end up switching up sleeping arrangements. I saw him no matter which bedroom I slept in. He was tall, with dark hair and dark, stormy-looking eyes. But it may have just been the shadows. I was very frightened of him. But I didn't tell anyone in my family, because no one else mentioned seeing anything. I figured they didn't see him, not like I did. One night my 2 younger sisters and I were sleeping in a room with our older sister. None of us had fallen asleep yet. One little sister needed a drink. My older sister was taking her to the kitchen. I didn't want to go because there was a man standing there. My baby sister decided not to go to the kitchen, and I was relieved because that meant I wouldn't have to pass by the man at the doorway. After the first 2 sisters left, my youngest sister decided to go after them after all and ran out of the room. I stood there, staring at a man, trying to decide what to do. If I stood there, he could come in and get me. But if I ran, I'd have to run right past him. I decided to make a run for it. And as I ran past him, he smiled at me. An amused smile. I felt a rush of relief and went to the kitchen to join the other 3. When we went back to the bed, the man was not there, and I don't recall ever seeing him again. Some years later, the house was renovated, and 2 bedrooms were added on. The 2 additional bedrooms were set up almost like a condo. One was sunken, and the other is above it, with a small staircase going to the room above. In late high school and college, the upstairs room was mine. At times I'd be laying in bed, and my lamp would suddenly go out. I'd have to turn the switch back on, as if someone had flipped the switch off. One night this happened 3 times in a row, before I decided to finally give it up and go to sleep. People in the downstairs room would hear someone walking around upstairs when there was no one there. My boyfriend, who is now my husband, would come home with me from college and stay in my room. I stayed in the downstairs room with my sister. We would sit up late talking and hear my boyfriend walking around in his boots at night. We could hear the difference in his footsteps, from walking on the carpet to walking on the linoleum in the bathroom. When we'd ask him about it the next day, he would say he hadn't got up and hadn't been walking around. We thought maybe he just didn't remember, but thought it was unusual for him to put his boots on just to go walking around the room. Then one night we heard it, when he hadn't came in from school with me. Me and my sister was down in her room, and we heard someone in boots walking around in my room. But there shouldn't have been anyone in that room. Because it was such a large family, we thought that maybe someone had snuck up there. Like one of my married sisters had come over, and we hadn't noticed it. We went to investigate, and we found no one. Nothing. My husband swears that room was weird. The toilet would flush all night. The radio would not only turn on by itself, but change stations. And the light would turn itself on and off. My father, he never believed until one night when he was home alone and heard noises upstairs. This was well after I was married, and that room was now my brother's room. He was thinking that somehow my brother's friends had came over. My dad went upstairs to see who was making all that noise. He said it sounded like someone was moving furniture. There was no one in the room when Dad went to investigate. When Mom finally made it home that night, he looked at her and said, "There's something in this house." Several of us frequently heard voices outside, as if a small group of people were in our front yard talking. It was a low murmur. One sister and I went so far as to sneak out the back door and walk around to the front of the house to investigate. Just like in horror movies, it was really stupid of us. We would hear the murmur until we got to the corner of the house, and then it would stop. As soon as we backed up, we could hear it again. There was a large tree in that part of the front yard of the house, and I remember seeing what looked like people sitting under the tree at night. Maybe they were having some sort of family reunion. We nicknamed this odd occurrence, this strange inhabitant of our house, Grandpa, and just laughed about it. We still hear things from time to time when it's really quiet. My father's passed away now, but my mother still lives in the house. My brother and one of his sons spent the night with my mom, and the next morning my nephew got up before my brother. He came running back to the bedroom and told his dad that he had to come. Hurry. He said that my brother would be so happy. So my brother got up and went to the den with my nephew. My nephew looked confused and said, "But he was just here. Papa was sitting right there in his chair." At the time, my nephew was about 3 years old. My father had passed away when my nephew was about 2. My nephew was insistent that he had saw his papa, my dad, sitting in his favorite chair. And I believe him. Story 2. Tabby and Fran. It was about 10 or 15 years ago. I was living in a small cottage on a property that had 2 other houses. I worked on the orchard that was just across the road. The property I live on was originally owned by the sister and brother-in-law of my boss. The sister, Fran, had passed away some years ago. Her husband, Victor, had moved closer to his sons about a year before I moved in. One day, while riding a quad bike home for lunch, I saw a woman standing near an old unused water tank that was between my cottage and the main house. Knowing the people who rent the main house quite well, I assumed that she must be a friend, so I waved and thought nothing of it. Later that night, I asked my neighbors who she was. They had no idea what I was talking about. They had no visitors that day, and had no idea who could have been outside. Some days later, I was speaking to my boss about it. He asked me to describe the lady. After telling him all about her, I can still picture her exactly to this day. He told me that I had perfectly described Tabby. Tabby was a gardener, employed by Victor and Fran some 30 years previous. The place I saw her standing was where the vegetable garden had been. During part of her time there, she had actually lived in the cottage that I was now renting. I only ever saw her that one time. But she was also seen by a lady that was visiting me once. Once in the same place, and once again in my kitchen window. She was never threatening and seemed to be perfectly real and solid, not like you would think a ghost would be. I have since moved into the main house, and I have several experiences here as well. I believe these to be Fran. The master bedroom has a bathroom directly opposite, and on 3 occasions I have been looking in the mirror and glimpsed someone walking into the bedroom. My girlfriend has also seen the same thing. I actually feel quite secure having them around. It feels as though they are looking out for the place that they had loved when they were alive. Not very exciting, I know, but these sightings are real, as anything that's happened in my day-to-day life. No ghostly mist or see-through figures. I would swear that these people were actually there, solid human forms. In just the last 2 weeks, some other strange things have been happening. I was woken at 3 a.m. one morning by a very loud sound in the second bedroom. I looked in, and a broom that has always been kept outside by the back door was in the shower. I heard this exact same noise a few days later, during the day this time, but this time there was nothing there to explain it. I'm not sure what these latest developments mean, but I still feel very safe and wanted here. Story 3. Apartment haunting. A few years ago, we moved into one of the old buildings in our downtown. Many places in this side of town are 50 to 100 plus years old. The area is full of history, some of it dark and unsettling. From the very first second I walked into this new place, I knew it was an old school. I later found out that yes, it was in fact the old elementary school. It had been replaced by a new elementary school sometime in the 40s. Since the beginning, I knew something else was in the building with us. Within the first week of moving in, I sat alone in the living room and I heard the sound of children laughing from directly in front of me in the middle of our living room. I'm still not sure if it was from outside, upstairs, or what, but it was slightly alarming. A friend who visited shortly after also reported that she felt a child grab her hand as she walked into the apartment. A few months later, I was home alone. I was getting ready to head out. Allow me to give you a little bit of the layout. The apartment is laid out like an H, with a long living room space that leads through an archway into the kitchen hallway area. That narrows down into a hallway with a pantry on the left and a bathroom on the right just before our bedroom door. The bedroom is isolated from the rest of the place. I cannot hear anyone knocking on the front door if I'm in the bedroom. The building is made out of thick brick and concrete with plaster walls, with a wooden raised floor. Technically, the ground floor is below ground level. I was in the bathroom, getting out of the shower. I had the bathroom door wide open, and when I have the bathroom door wide open, it blocks the hallway. In the kitchen hall section, there's a large dresser with a 45-gallon fish tank on it. In the reflection of the tank, you could see into the kitchen. As I flipped my head upside down to wrap my hair, I glanced into the fish tank and I saw a tall man standing in my kitchen. I quickly stood and ran out, checking the kitchen. There was nobody but my cat and me in the entire apartment. I went back to the bathroom to see if I could figure it out, but I never could. Several months passed. My boyfriend, myself, and the cat were in the living room area. All the lights were off on the other end of the apartment. Everybody, including the cat, was up off the floor, sitting down. Suddenly, I heard a noise from the other end of the apartment that sounded like a foot dragging across the carpet. I looked at my boyfriend, and he glanced at me. Neither of us knew what had made that sound. The cat acted like he clearly had heard something. A few days later, the sound repeated itself. About this time, we started leaving a light on at night. There was just something unnerving about being in the dark in this apartment. We knew we were not alone. Several times I would hear something, and I'd get up to go into the living room to see if my boyfriend had come home, only to find the place locked up and empty. He would do the same if he was home alone. One evening, I had been in my bedroom with my cat watching TV. My boyfriend was in the bathroom, with the door open. I got up, I turned off the TV and left the room. I closed the bathroom door just enough to get by. My cat was right on my heels. We sit down and we start watching TV in the living room. A few minutes later, my boyfriend joins us. And then he asks, "Hey, did you pass by the door twice?" And I was like, "No, why?" He stated that just before I walked by the door, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a pale female leg pass by the door. I said, "No, I would have had to move the door to pass. And the cat was with me. If I had passed twice, he would have also had to pass twice or 3 times. He doesn't know what he saw that night. Another night, he was in the bathroom shaving. I was standing in the hallway with the door open, blocking the hallway. I was talking to him, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a pale, white, sharp-clawed female hand wrap around the doorknob, and then quickly pull back around. I stopped mid-word. My boyfriend asked what I saw, and I told him. He looked past the door, and there was nothing there. Right then on the spot, we did a full cleansing ritual of the whole apartment. And that very day, the place felt better, lighter. No sounds, no shadows, no weird shapes. No major creepy feeling in the archway. But as the months passed, strange things started slowly happening again. Misty shapes out of the corner of our eyes. Faint, weird sounds. Might be time for another cleansing ritual, I think. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed these stories as much as I enjoyed reading them. As always, if you did, give me a thumbs up, hit the like button, drop me a comment down below. I love talking to you. And until next time, bye. Music by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio.